Welcome to the Thunder Digest post-game video wrap-up with Brady Trantham. I'm Erik G. Thunder on a 3-game losing streak after falling to the Pelicans 114-100. And normally, Brady, I would chalk this up to the Thunder being streaky like they've been all year, but you're playing 5 games in 7 days. It's the second of a back-to-back, home and road. Tonight, I think it just came down to the Thunder being fatigued.
Yeah, that's exactly what Billy Donovan said in the post-game. He kind of said, just like a frustrated fan tonight, like, I don't want to make any excuses, but we played the first half really well, and then we kind of just we struggled with fatigue, and that's exactly what happened. The Thunder had I think they had a 16-point lead in the second quarter, and then it kind of dwindled down to whatever it was at half, I think a 4-point lead. And then New Orleans kind of came out, went on a, I believe, 11-2 run to start the third quarter, and then they pretty much never looked back from there. It was all New Orleans tonight. I mean, they shot over 50% from the three-point line. I mean, it looked like a team that was just tired, and it's kind of a shame considering how exciting last night was with the 127-124 loss when Oklahoma City was pretty much perpetually down double digits all night, and they were able to fight back. But yeah, it was just, you kind of chalk it up to fatigue at the end of the day, but also after an 8-game winning streak, they are now losers of 3 straight.
And Alvin Gentry is full of crap, saying after the game in his post-game, which you can see on Thunder Digest in his post-game interview, that no, everybody knows how to handle back-to-backs. It's not that big a deal. We have to play them. The Thunder have to play them. No, it was an extreme advantage for the New Orleans Pelicans to catch Oklahoma City on the second of a back-to-back, because Oklahoma City is just a much more talented team than New Orleans, seeing as the fact New Orleans is down to DeMarcus Cousins. They haven't got Nikolai Mirotic yet, and the Thunder come in really with a full complement of players. I'd want to catch them on the second of a back-to-back. All that being said, and even though it was a loss tonight, I still think there's some positive things going for the Thunder. First of all, I'm starting to become a believer in this bench. Now, Patrick Patterson needs to get things going, but Alex Abrinas in the last couple of nights has been hot.
He's really upped his trade value.
And Jeremy Grant's playing well. Raymond Felton's giving you number-wise about what he always gives, but he's just that ever-steady guy. And when you're able to mix and match playing the starters with this bench, I feel a lot more comfortable about them being on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said at the very beginning with Patrick Patterson, he had a really tough game tonight. He had a really tough stretch where he airballed 2 3-pointers. Alex Abrinas, of course, had a really good game. I think he finished with, 14 points. He was red hot from the three-point line, shot 50% for the night, took eight attempts. He looks like a much different player than he was a month ago, and I believe Brett Dawson said it on their podcast the other night, where he basically asked Alex at his locker, so what's been going on, and Alex said that he's just been dealing with some knee soreness and some ankle soreness, and that he's finally kind of pretty much playing pain-free now, and it's certainly showing. And I mean, it couldn't have come at a better time for the Thunder, considering, the loss of Andre Robertson. They have to kind of make up for that in some ways here or there. You're not going to replace his defense. So what you can do is try and replace the obvious scoring, and that's what Abrinas, of course, brings to the table. Raymond Felton, of course, he's pretty much a consistent player in that backup point guard role. Nothing spectacular except for a few nights here and there where he just kind of lights the world on fire in the fourth quarter. He's definitely not Samaj Chris, and so that is a plus for this team. But yeah, the bench has really kind of come around in the last month or so, and pretty much shown, at least given me the confidence, that if the Thunder kind of figure out how to play without Andre Robertson on the defensive end, once they get into the postseason, this is a bench that you can kind of ride with in some matchups.
There are some thoughts out there that the Thunder will not be big players come trade deadline, and if that's the case, it only increases the importance of Alex Abrinas and Jeremy Grant and the need for them to be consistent every single night that they play. And I just wonder if they can handle the pressure of that. And Brett Dawson asking Alex that really echoes what Billy Donovan said a couple of weeks ago, that why we haven't seen Alex play so well is because he was injured, and now if he is back to 100%, maybe you can count on him. We don't know what to expect from Sam Presti at the trade deadline.
Nobody does.
I think we've learned that from the past. But I don't see Alex Abrinas as a guy the Thunder want to move. I don't think that was ever the case. I think he's a guy they want to believe in because he showed shades of it last year, and if he's coming around now, he's certainly proving his worth.
Yeah, I mean, I read something in The Athletic earlier today that the Thunder weren't going to be buyers at the trade deadline, just for the sole purpose of not wanting to screw up with this team's chemistry. And it took over 20-25 games for them to actually figure out how to play pretty good offensive and defensive basketball. And if you bring in 1 or 2 new faces into the locker room, it could kind of force that kind of figuring out the chemistry that much further deeper into the season. You definitely don't want that, especially with the loss of Andre Robertson. But yeah, it's really kind of hard to pinpoint something with this team that the trade deadline could fix. Now, if Alex Abrines is able to keep this play up, then that's certainly a welcome sight for the Thunder. It's just going to come down to his consistency and his confidence, because the guy just when he's in rhythm can shoot it with the best of them. Paul George, of course, near 40% from the three-point line this season so far. It's just really hard to pinpoint what this team needs, because they're so talented offensively. They have so much potential defensively. It's just nights like tonight, you kind of look at if someone says that to you, you kind of look at them and say, what?
One thing I toyed with the idea of and threw it out on Twitter, and I haven't got your reaction to it, is with the way Jeremy Grant has been playing, and granted, Terrence Ferguson has had a little bit of a stomach bug or whatever, so that would explain maybe his performance tonight, and of course what happened last night. I wondered about putting Jeremy Grant into the starting lineup. The only thing I don't like about that is that we just haven't seen enough scoring off the bench this year. That's something that I don't want to mess with. I don't think the Thunder will do it, but I wouldn't mind maybe seeing them throw that out there as an experiment.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as Billy Donovan likes to toy with lineups, he doesn't necessarily like to toy with his starting 5. Obviously, Ferguson is in there for injury reasons, of course, but Jeremy Grant in the starting lineup, I just don't know how you would I don't know how that would work with Melo and Paul George out there. I mean, does that mean Paul slides to the 2? Does that mean Melo slides to the 3? And where does Jeremy Grant end up? The thing
it's positionless basketball. Does it really matter where anybody slides?
I mean, you're exactly right. But the thing with Grant that I think that he really thrives on is just high energy and being a spark plug off the bench, and that's where that comes into play. And and this is going to be a really, really weird comparison, but James Harden, when he had those handful of games that even Scott Brooks has said, been on record as saying, he had a handful of games that final year in Oklahoma City where he had to start because Thabo Sefolosha was injured. And after playing off the bench and being that 6th man all season and for the entirety of his career with the Thunder, it just really screwed with Harden's rhythm. And Scott Brooks said that he would ask to not start. I want to come off the bench. And I know that's kind of silly. Now James Harden's probably going to win the MVP this year, and we all know what happened since then. But I kind of see that a similar aspect with that with Jeremy Grant's game, because he comes in and really takes advantage of the opponent's bench unit, and with his length, his athleticism, and now he's actually really figuring out how to control his body when he's driving to the rim. And with his body, he could live at the free throw line. He's a pretty good free throw shooter, so I think that could be good for the Thunder going forward. And I mean, last night he had 18 points and really had a big thing to say for the Thunder's comeback. Tonight he had a nice game. He had 12 points scoring. He was a minus 19 on the from the floor, but pretty much everybody was a minus tonight. Grant with 12, Alex Abrines with 14. That's good bench production on a night like this where you have to really scratch and claw for some positives. That was one of them. Monster
night for Steven Adams, which is interesting considering the fact that most of the night he was dealing with Anthony Davis. And I'll go back to what Alvin Gentry said in his post-game interview. Anthony Davis does not like to play against Steven Adams because he's such a beast, and not having DeMarcus Cousins there certainly allowed the Thunder to attack the paint tonight. And that's just, when that gets going, when you see Russell Westbrook to Steven Adams, it's a thing of beauty, and it's a lot of fun just watching Steven Adams dunk and rebound and just be that prototypical center that we grew up watching, or at least I grew up watching.
He's really come into his own over this season. He's really become a complete player, both on the offensive end, the defensive end. He's found a niche on the offensive end to kind of basically expand his role offensively just by eating up offensive rebounds and getting putbacks. And it's kind of weird. Tonight he was the leading scorer for the Thunder. He had 23 points and 12 rebounds. A monster, like you said, a monster game. The bad thing was, of course, was just that pick and roll defense. It seemed like Anthony Davis had a lob show tonight. I think there were 5 or 6 lobs to Anthony Davis, and when the perimeter defense is a little spotty, it kind of forces Adams away from the rim, and it allows for something like that. When you're playing up against an athletic big like Davis, if your rim protector is not protecting the rim, then that's going to be there all evening.
Well, even had the perimeter defense been good tonight, I still think that you would have seen Anthony Davis get the better of Steven Adams on that offensive end, just because Anthony Davis is such an athletic freak, and I don't care how good Steven Adams is, a guy like Davis is gonna get his.
Yeah, I mean, Adams is always going to have a problem with athletic bigs. I mean, look no further than last night with Nikola Jokic, who had a triple-double and just pretty much ate Adams' lunch. It's Adams is a force in the paint. When he plays conventional bigs, he'll eat them alive. But when he has to get away from the rim, that's when it gets a little troublesome. But the thing is, when Robertson's out there, there's a little bit more margin for error because people are usually in their correct spots, and Adams has to do so much now to make up for the deficiencies for Melo and Russell Westbrook, and especially Terrence Ferguson when he's been able to be out there. But yeah, it's a shame. But at the end of the day, I kind of hesitate when people call this a big three, because the Thunder are going to win a game, but they're going to win some more games. It's not the end of the world. They won 8 straight. Now they've lost 3 in a row. They're going to win another game. But when people call this a big three, I kind of just catch myself and think, man, this is a big 4.
Yeah, and that's why I want to bring up the elephant in the room, and that was the Blake Griffin trade that did not happen. And most Thunder fans disagree with me. There are very few moves that Sam Presti's made that I disagree with. And I say this fully for full disclosure. I honestly thought when Kyle Singler was signed that it wasn't going to be that bad, that he might be a guy to come off the bench, play some defense. But
really, nobody should blame you, because the guy was a 38% three-point shooter in Detroit, a heavy contributor for a fringe kind of playoff team. He was a very good role player, so nobody should really.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, they should for that. I was flat out wrong. I admit it, and it was horribly wrong. But I would have pulled the trigger on the Blake Griffin trade, especially straight up for Paul George. And I agree with everyone that says George is a better fit. George is a better player. You're absolutely right. What this came down to me for having the opinion that I do is Paul George is not under contract. Blake Griffin is. And you talk about that big three. I loved the idea, because I'm still of the belief that Carmelo Anthony's only here 1 year, that it would have been a big three of Steven Adams, Blake Griffin, and Russell Westbrook. And yes, you could have built around that, and that's a team that could have contended. I would have done it. The only way I wouldn't have done it is if somehow I have violated NBA rules and there's a contract already signed by Paul George that I can just slide over as soon as free agency begins. It just, I am a sure thing build for the future, or at least the immediate future guy, and I don't like leaving those kind of things up in the air.
Which is interesting, because usually Sam Presti himself is that way. I mean, he always likes to not only help the team now, but he likes to build for the future and have sustained success, which has kind of been his mantra since the Thunder have been in Oklahoma City. It's going to be interesting, of course, when we get to the offseason, and if Paul George decides to walk. A lot of fans are going to be pointing to this, this past week, where the Thunder could have had Blake Griffin for the next 3 to 4 years, along with Russell Westbrook during his prime. So, if just by using logic, none of us are going to know any of these things. This is all assumption, but just by using logic, you've got to think that Presti has some type of good idea or an understanding that he has a very, very a better than decent chance to retain Paul George. And Russ loves playing with Paul George. Paul George loves playing with Russell Westbrook. Carmelo loves playing with those two as well, and vice versa. You just got to think that Presti probably has a better understanding than, of course, we do, that Paul probably has a good chance of staying in Oklahoma City.
The only thing that I was even concerned about bringing Blake Griffin in wasn't even the change of style that would have had to go on, because Carmelo Anthony then becomes your three-point shooter in the starting lineup, and really you're only one. But chemistry-wise, what would that chemistry have been like bringing Blake Griffin in, especially since there were some tense moments when he was with the Clippers against Oklahoma City, and for him being one of Oklahoma's favorite sons, a lot of Thunder fans don't like that dude. And I did kind of wonder how all that plays out in the locker room, and if maybe that's a reason